I just invite us to drop into our bodies, into the here and now, just pulling all our energy to arrive here together with the intention to connect and allow our words and our presence to be exactly what we need in this moment. Just letting go of today, letting go of tomorrow. Just be right here, right now.
Hey everyone. Um, we have been chatting about the different topics that we could come up with over the last few weeks, and something that's really been on my heart is parenting and the different ways in which we honor our children and honor ourselves. B just recently said something today that says our roles as parents shift as our children grow, and that really hit. So I have been working with B for several years, and a lot of that stuff that comes up is through parenting. And often how you chat about how you work through things with your kids always blows me away. And I'm always impressed with how you allow yourself to move through humaning and do what needs to get done as a parent, as a woman, as a human. And sometimes we're not always our best selves when you do that, but how you come back to your children when those times take place and talk through that and own what happened and let them know what you were feeling, and allow them to relate with, it's okay to feel emotion. Let's talk about what that looked like for me and how that felt and why I ended up where we ended up. And I'm just going to kind of leave it there with you, and so you can tell us all about your magic and parenting.
Throughout the process, I've learned a lot about repair. A lot of the different people I follow speak about repair. Dr. Becky at Good Inside and Dr. Gabor Mate talk about, when there's a blow up, repairing the relationship. And it's always the parent's responsibility to repair the relationship. And I know throughout the years, being at different like play groups and mommy groups, and I've shared my experience of my emotions, and people have been appalled at the fact that I let my children see when I'm angry, or I let my children see when I'm sad. And the truth of it is I don't know how to not do that. So I don't feel like I'm doing anything special. I have so many feelings that I don't really get the choice to share them or not. And I feel like that has historically been my story throughout my whole life. Uh, I normalize emoting. I apologize when I yell. I own when I'm dysregulated because it's real and true and in the moment. And I don't subscribe to this way of parenting that like they're just children, they don't understand. They totally understand. They probably understand better than most adults because adults are so busy not emoting that they just think you're crazy. And so I can have a really present, meaningful, connected conversation with my children um, when big things come up because they genuinely understand. I remember a hunk of years ago, my youngest was quite a rager, and I understand now how dysregulated I was in my body. So of course he was dysregulated in his body. And I remember asking him after like a particularly nasty episode, like, what happened? And he's like, I don't really have words for it. I don't really understand what happens. But he said, when like you have colors and you mix two colors together and it becomes a completely different color, it's like that. He's like, but I don't know the word for that feeling, but it's like all of the things mix and it's something else completely. And I think he was like 6 at the time. And I was like, whoa, That's like really great understanding, even if you don't understand. And it just felt like, okay, like we can do this.
I read something recently that said, I don't know exactly what the saying is, but when kids are having big emotions, we're not supposed to add to that storm. And I too struggled with my youngest when I left my ex-husband. Cole was about 2 years old, and it was 2 years of hell. It was almost 3 years of hell. It was a lot. It was a lot of struggle. And looking back, same thing. I was figuring out myself, being a queer woman and now a single mom, and just how dysregulated I was and how I reacted to his emotions. And it was almost like, you're not allowed to be angry and you're not allowed to be sad, but I'm allowed to be angry and I'm allowed to be sad. So why we allow ourselves that, but don't hold the space for our kids? I think we're just not aware of it so often, right? And it's almost the word that keeps coming to mind is inconvenience. The inconvenience of having to move through the navigation of the rage or the temper tantrum, when if we just take a step back and realize that they're going through stuff as well, it would make such a difference in how we respond. um, and and you're right, in often, especially both of my kids actually can pick up on me being dysregulated sometimes even before I realize like the energy I'm putting out there. So they definitely are aware of what's going on more, I think, than we ever realize as adults, and moving through that. And then it takes the us owning it, that holy shit, I did react in a way that wasn't necessary, that wasn't appropriate, and then going to my 8-year-old and saying, hey, I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry I spoke to you that way. I'm sorry those words came out of my mouth. And he always says, it's okay, mom. And I remind him, it's not okay that I acted that way, but thank you for holding space and grace for me. And we always work through it. He's an empath, so he feels all of it. But yeah, normalize emoting is what I have written down here. Because we fear emotion, we fear sadness, we fear anger, we fear frustration, because we don't want our kids to see that. And why don't we want them to see that? Why don't we want them to think, hey, it's okay to be pissed off, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to feel these things, these are human emotions? Why do we keep that from our kids, I wonder? Discomfort. Comes down to discomfort and how we don't want that for them or for us. And it's time to get uncomfortable.
Oh my heck, I love that. The space and the grace, right? Like I always tell my children, I might be older. That doesn't make me wiser. And that doesn't mean I have any more coping skills than you do in moments,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I am profoundly dysregulated right now. Oh my heck. And I say to them, can you feel my nervous system right now? And they'll be like, yep. And I think the hardest thing for me as a child um, was feeling the undercurrent of the room and being told that it's all okay. I know in my little body, I know now in my big body that everything is not okay. Don't tell me it's okay. I can feel it. They can feel it. So having been on the placating side of that as a little girl and people being like, oh, they're there. It's fine. It's nothing for you to worry your teeny tiny little brain about. Um, I am worried. I can feel you. And so owning it now and allowing space for them to own it. Um, right before the world shut down, I was looking to have my kid diagnosed. And the truth of the matter is, I can look back now and say, in all honesty, he wasn't the problem. And I remember saying to people, like, he's a physical representation of what's happening inside of my body. But I wasn't actually hearing the words as I was saying them. Or like maybe I wasn't understanding, but it was like, I'm fucking losing my shit inside my body here. So of course he's losing it in real time. And then I'm like looking around to find solutions for him. And thankfully, the world shut down. And all I had was Dr. Gabor Mate's book, Scattered Minds. And he said he doesn't treat children for ADHD, he treats the parents. And I was like, oh, shit, perfect. All I have is time to work on myself. Yes. Um, but it was exactly what I needed to be like, oh, yeah, right. Like, hmm, all of this, like the undercurrent, the unspoken words, like I said, like the resentment sandwich. Yeah, I'll make you a sandwich, but it's going to be tainted with negativity. And so, really owning that, like, I can't do that for you right now. I haven't tended to my own needs. I need to take space. And I tell you, my children have a deep appreciation for when I take the space that I need to, because when I don't, I'm like a lunatic inside my body. Even if it's not coming out of my mouth, I'm like this. Loud noises bother me, too much talking bothers me. I'm just like this irritated, snarky, ugh.
Your kids ever call you out and be like, Mom, you need to take some time?
Yeah, absolutely. And my favorite is I have this snotty bitch face that is literally meant to shit and shame. I was taught it, it was perfected at my little girl, and I hate that face. Like I can see it, it comes up as one of my parts now, and she shits and shames me. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly the one I don't want to show to my children. And when I'm dysregulated, the shit and shame face comes on, and they'll be like, I don't like that face. And I'll be like, I know. I'm sorry. I'm trying not to have my shit and shame face, and I'm really dysregulated. So I'm just gonna go take some space. And I feel like that marks a good, healthy, connected relationship when someone can look at you and be like, "You're really like not rocking it right now. Take some space." Like I can respect that.
Especially from a child,
Mhm.
right? Them being in a space where they know they're safe enough to be like, hey, I know that face, this isn't cool, and I'm not ready for that. To be able to say, like, I need some space from you. It is nothing breaks my heart more when Cole says to me, why are you so angry with me today? And my anger
Mm,
is not with him at all, ever. It never has been. Um, Never say never. I mean, there are times where I'm frustrated, but it is always because he's come home and I've had a day from hell and I am dysregulated. And then in turn, that gets taken out on him. And he's able to say, hey, why are you angry with me? Having said that, I have a sign in my house that says, it's summertime, the windows are open. If you hear me screaming, I've said it 27 times kindly and nicely. And now I'm raging. So it's obviously there are times where I'm frustrated, but it's a lot of times comes out because I haven't had the opportunity to put that energy elsewhere. And so it comes on them. And then they see it and they own it and they call you out on it.
yeah. And what would have happened in your childhood if you hadn't called out your parents?
Oh, there was no calling out your parents. So at all. Yeah, it was. I had a brother who took his life when I was 4. He was 14. So I got away with a lot more than I should have as a teenager. And probably said things, not probably, I said things that shouldn't have never been said. But there was also a level of respect that was required. And I don't want to use the word respect, actually. I don't know what the proper word is, but there was a level of expectation as from me to not have those emotions or feel those things. Even though he died when I was 4, I wasn't allowed to attend the funeral. And I didn't know what a funeral was. I knew my brother wasn't coming back, and I knew there was a lot of people coming to this thing called a funeral, but I wasn't allowed to go, and I never understood that. And it was because my mom didn't want to have to deal with a 4-year-old at the funeral of her son. I understand that, but again, wasn't able to process the emotions and the death um, in a way that I hoped I could have, I think, now as an adult, because emotions that would be attached to what that looks like, right? Everyone's crying because my brother's not coming back. So then I'm going to be sad, but there was no space for sadness. Again, my parents did the best they could. They were grieving the loss of their son through suicide. And we're still trying to do life. But I think holding that space for kids to just feel emotion and move through it and allow them to have their rage and their temper tantrum and then come back and walk through what happened, because Cole says the same thing. I have no idea what's happening in my body, but I know I don't have control. He's able to say that this comes out and he has no way of stopping it. He's able to recognize that. That's huge. So walking them through what it looks like differently and modeling that is, I think, really important responsibility for us as parents.
How many humans do you know that can't hold the emotion of rage? Like, of all the emotions, that one we have no space for it. We judge it so nasty. Like, anger and rage is literally designed to burn down your, like, what it needs to erect the boundaries or notice what's not working. And I've noticed that throughout my journey of parenting, which I'll remind you is 25 years long. I can hold space for a lot of emotions. When historically, when rage comes up, I want to meet it. I want to, like, and I've spent a lot of time like sitting with it. Like, what is that about? Um, it's a lack of safety inside my body. So historically, um, if there was rage, there was no safety. And so one of the ways to protect myself would be to stand up for myself and meet that rage, which in some situations is really brilliant. When your 6-year-old is coming at you with rage, it's not the best time. Um, and so, sitting with them, holding space, hearing them, and then hearing the different stories flare off inside my head, like how they should be talking to me. They're totally going to end up a serial killer. Like whatever that is. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing a good enough job. And just being able to, it's taken a lot of practice and I don't always nail it, but let that all go because none of that is about them. And they just need to feel their feelings and fully express them so that they can offload them and carry on. Um, it's really, really hard not to get stuck in the story of, my raging 6-year-old is going to end up in jail for being such a rager. Or like, I'm not a good enough parent because he feels so angry. I'm not, in my house, it's always like brother against brother. So I'm not navigating this brotherhood well enough or like whatever. And just be like, I hear you. I will tend to all of these things that are flaring for me because they're obviously part of something that's happening for me, but I don't get to do that work while he's feeling his feelings. And totally acknowledging when I do. Oh man, sorry, buddy, I just made that all about me. Carry on. Sorry. Um, didn't mean to interrupt. You get to rage in this moment. But I have historically had the hardest time holding space for rage. You want to cry? I will hold you and listen. And I have all sorts of capacity for grief and sadness and sorrow. Rage, historically, I've wanted to meet that one head on and fight it.
And I think it again comes to discomfort. We don't like the discomfort that the rage brings. So we try and fight it rather than sit with it. Right. And just as adults, when I'm feeling angry and frustrated and gross emotions, I'm always like, okay, let's sit down and ground myself and just get back to what needs to where I need to be. And it's like, no, why am I fighting what I'm feeling? Just allow myself to feel it. And then I'm going to move on. The longer I fight it, the longer it's going to take to pass through my body. But if I just allow myself to go through these feelings and these emotions, that's when I'm able to move forward. That's when the healing takes place. That's when my parts come out to play, and new parts come to play. And we just fight the emotion, often rage, but emotion that's uncomfortable all the time, because we just want to be at peace. But how we find peace and appreciate peace is by having the hard, dark, heavy days. That's what makes us realize what's important is the pendulum, right? You can't have one without the other at all. So that makes all the difference once we've come to that realization.
Absolutely. And a lot of the humans I encounter are really just looking for that like happiness. And I always say, that's not happiness, that's flatlined, that's dead, that's not feeling. Like to emote is to have ups and downs. And like you said, you can't appreciate one without the other. And so all of us who are, trying to hold one emotion at bay, you're holding all of them. Like if you're trying to suppress grief, you are suppressing joy. Like that is just factual. Um, and I want to touch on perception. My now adult son and I had a great conversation probably about a decade ago. So he was somewhere in his teen years. And I was talking about, I don't know who was talking about what. It was about video games. And when he was younger, he would play the video games and I would lay there and watch. And I was such a good mom because I was staying present to his situation. When I should have been studying or cleaning the house. I was a single parent. Like there's about a bajillion things that I should have been doing, not laying on that couch watching him. And I would often doze off. Um, and his perception of it was that I didn't care enough to stay awake. And I remember being like, oh my God, that's what you took from that? Like, thank you so much for being able to tell me that. And I am so genuinely sorry. I thought I was like kicking ass, like being a great mom, taking that time and laying beside you and watching this game for the 37,000th time. Um, yeah, I thought I was killing it. And he just took that I didn't care enough to stay awake. And wow.
That's powerful. And perception, right? Intent doesn't excuse perception. And that's a tough one, especially when you're like, I am killing it, like I've got this. And then to hear that, it's
Mhm.
it's a blow, right? And but again, so great that he's able to say, this is how I'm feeling. That's how that made me feel. And then from there, you're able to make the changes that you see fit. So long as we listen and hear what they have to say and take that with us on the journey. Respect their words.
to hold space for him to be able to say that and not like go on the defensive.
So hard to take feedback and to hear it. What's the saying? Most people listen to respond rather than listening to hear what he has to say without response, without defensive, without I'm sorry, but, because as soon as you throw that but in there, it negates their feelings. It completely takes away from what they've shared. So being able just to hear it and allow them to express it without the defenses, because you want to, it's like, no, that was not what I was, I'm so sorry, but I thought I was doing, it's easy to do that. And again, take away, it invalidates what they're bringing forward. And so it's something that we need to walk away from a situation and really do some reflecting in not this specific situation, but just in general of what do I do different? How do I make it so this little human knows that the choices I'm making are intentional to be with them, even if they're not feeling that way? Reflection. It's not always fun. It's always necessary, though.